What's up, everyone? My name is Jordan Farmer, and this is the Uncommon Ground Podcast, Episode 7. And today we're going to be talking about immigration, how much immigration we should have, what are the different types of immigrants, and what immigrants mean within a political policy context and an economic context. So, first and foremost, you just have to understand that immigrants are people, obviously, so they have value beyond just economic sort of considerations. But labor is still a commodity within the market, and the demand for labor is jobs, and the supply of labor is people. So immigration is the importing of excess labor. And if you understand basic supply and demand, if you increase the supply relative to the demand, then you're going to devalue that particular thing because there's more of it. People need to sell it. Anyways, so having an excess of supply decreases scarcity, which is what gives things value within an economic context. So that might make it seem as if I'm saying that immigration is inherently bad, but that is not the case. There are scenarios in which we need more labor because we don't have enough to grow the economy right now as much as we could. But an excess rate of immigration, an excess supply of labor can create downward pressure on wages, downward pressure on salaries, and that tool has actually been used against American laborers since about 1970. A lot of things shifted right around 1970. It's, in my opinion, and I'll talk about this in a systemic racism video coming up, it's because of the Civil Rights Act of 1963, and that represented the first time in the American system where all American laborers had a fair shake. We had 7 years of that, and then after 7 years, policy started to shift to start to work against American laborers again. And that happened right in 1970, and unfortunately, it's been the rate of immigration. So right now, just to kind of explain that, right now we have about 100,000 people that are becoming 16 or 18 or whatever and entering the labor force every month, about 100,000. It's probably increased a little bit. And obviously we're in the midst of COVID and the pandemic and the lockdown recessions. So it's all the numbers are a little fuzzy right now. But we were creating jobs in 2018 and 2019 before all this happened. We were creating jobs at about 250,000 a month. So that represents a jobs or a demand for labor surplus of about 150,000. Now, obviously, we have an unemployment rate, which means some people can't find work. That's because jobs might pop up in one state, but people that need jobs are in another state. And so that's one concern. But that gap, that 150,000 a month, when that gap grows to the point where the number of jobs available across the nation exceeds the number of people that are actively looking for jobs, I call that labor scarcity. And that creates a scenario where companies are forced to compete for laborers. And they do that through raising wages, through paying more for that commodity. That's how you compete as a consumer for a commodity. So, what you have to understand is that when you increase the supply or the rate of the increase of the supply so that it exceeds the demand or the jobs created, you're losing labor scarcity. And then if you, through trade deals, allow jobs to go overseas, you're then diluting the demand for labor and thus creating or diluting labor scarcity again. So our immigration should not be a fixed rate of 150,000, for example. It should be calibrated to the number of excess positions that we have, and it should also take into account the number of actual laborers that will be brought in through immigration compared to just the number of people. So obviously, if you have an immigrant come in and they have a spouse, but the spouse isn't going to work, that's not necessarily a laborer jumping in. But the point is, we should only have immigration when we have an excess number of jobs, and that's when we bring them in. And when we have a recession or some rapid decrease in the demand for labor, a decrease in jobs, we should stop immigration so that the recovery of the economy can help Americans that have lost their jobs first. And once we achieve labor scarcity again and wages, and that relationship between laborers and capitalists is restabilized, then start bringing in more Americans. And what's cool about this approach is if you actually follow it, and this will grow wages, which will grow investment and consumption capital within the United States, which will grow the economy and create more jobs. And by maintaining labor scarcity, we'll actually be able to bring in more immigrants. It's all about the timing of it. It's not about the amount. Ultimately, it's about the rate in which they come in. So that kind of answers the how many should come in. Now we have a question of who do we decide should come in. And there's a claim that diversity is a strength, or our strength is the way it's phrased all the time, but that diversity is a strength. That is not a fact. Uniformity and having a homogenous society seems to actually render strength and stability over time. The most unstable countries right now, and that's because of a lot of things, but the most racially diverse countries and the most unstable countries are the same countries, in that they're like Iraq and Afghanistan. I encourage you to go look at the most diverse countries. All that is to say, that's not to say that diversity is bad. That's just to say that diversity comes with challenges because of human nature. And only when you have a society and values of a society and a system in a society that counterbalances that racial tribal nature via the Civil Rights Act and all that kind of stuff, only then can you have a diverse society that is strong. But it is not the diversity itself that is the strength. It's not the diversity of race that is the strength. It's the diversity of ideas within the people's minds, the diversity of action, the diversity of meaningful aspects of human life. Racial diversity is racism. Like caring about racial diversity or caring about racial homogeneity in a strict sense is racist. Both of them are racist. Who cares what race the people are that are here that are immigrants? I don't care if America becomes predominantly brown or black or Asian or whatever. America is an idea, and America is about freedom, and it's about trying to push the world towards more freedom. I don't care what the race is of the people that are here. Now, the other side of that is there's a lot of people that have a lot of revenge mindset about history. Like, I was born in 94. If you want to hold me accountable for crap that happened in 93 or before, no, that's stupid. But it's still stupid if you hold 2-year-old me accountable for freaking riots in LA, you know? That is also stupid. But the question after how many people is who do we take in and how do we decide? We could use an economic tool to guide us, and that is just to say the average of the immigrants that we bring into the country, the average income of all the immigrants brought into the country in the last 10 years should match or exceed the average income in the United States. What does that mean? That means that the people that we're bringing in are not filling in jobs just in the top or just in the bottom, which means we're not just bringing in rich people or poor people, we're bringing in a balance, and we're letting them, and we're bringing in so that's one way. You could also judge them by their merits. You could say your education, your number of languages you speak, the number of countries you've lived. You know, you could pick different merit type of aspects. Some people like to go with kind of like just pick diversity for diversity's sake, and it's just a random sort of luck of the draw. You just get a lottery type of deal, and we want as many countries involved. There's a lot of different ways you could go, but I don't like that one necessarily. Again, I don't like diversity for diversity's sake. Just like I don't think homogeneity for homogeneity's sake. It's really hard to say. I don't like that either. But We definitely, obviously, don't want rapists. We definitely don't want murderers. We want to screen people for violent histories. A lot of that is very basic and not as controversial as it's made out to be. And we do have certain standards already. We don't lack standards entirely right now. So, I don't really have a firm answer on that. Again, I think the number of people we bring in matters more than the individuals that we bring in, except when we're bringing in just poor people or just rich people, because then we're excluding certain people depending on those factors. But if we just brought rich people in, that would grow the 1% class here, allow us to have more of a welfare state, and allow us to increase the consuming power here, and that would have reverberations. So there's merit to that. I'm just not that firm either way on it, really. I don't think it matters as much. But if I were to, the point of this podcast is to give you answers, so I'll just say that my preference, or where I think the most substance leans, is having some sort of merit-based criteria for who we bring in, with a secondary premium on diversity. So we have these sort of standards, and then we also like to pick from a certain number of countries. That's kind of like my ideal recipe, but the details of that, or the factors that go into that, are very, very numerous. Because if you have a country that doesn't have good crime records keeping, then how could you expect to be able to screen someone from that country for a violent past? All those kinds of things. So, final point, I'm going to break down those 4 categories of immigrants and then talk about essential policies to handle bringing them in. I've already talked about future legal immigration. Now I'll talk about future illegal immigration. We should build a wall, not just, and I don't mean a wall like an actual wall. I do like the sort of slatted bars that we have now that are 30 feet tall on the border. I'm all for it. I think it's a good idea. Even if you could dig under it, even if you could climb over it, even if you could find your way around it, even if you could cut through it, having a physical barrier slows you down. Then you have technology on top of that detects people. Then you have personnel on top of that shows up and actually determines whether this person is making a real asylum claim, is just a child, is, just trying to cross the border illegally, is a smuggler, which a coyote is just a term for a smuggler. If you watch the last debate and all the controversy around coyote carrying babies through the desert within their mouths. Anyways, the wall, let's say, so initially I think the number was $5 billion would be spent on the wall, and then it was $10 billion, then it was 15. Some people are saying 20 now, and I think it's silly, honestly, getting caught up on this. Let's say it was $45 billion, twice the highest number that I've seen recently. That is 1% in 1 year of the federal budget spending. Before COVID spending, and we spent we've spent trillions of dollars this year, just to handle COVID. So, and the lockdowns, recovering from the lockdowns. So, it's really ridiculous to talk about that money when it's 1% of the budget in 1 year. And then you have the infrastructure, then the technology, then the personnel, all working in tandem, and any other tools you can have. We should have a secure border. There are real consequences to illegal immigration. This is a great topic. So 1 in 3 women get raped coming over the border. Who knows how many children get raped? Who knows how many children die on the way? Tons of children, about 1 in 3 also. It was actually less than that. It was about 29-30% of families tested. This is the only number I have. It might have gone up or down since, and I'm sure it depends on the month or the year. 1 in 3 of the people that show up with kids, those kids are not theirs. 1 in 3. 1 in 3. And previously, we would just let them in. We would just say, okay, come back for your court date and go on through to Texas. And that's crazy. And I think the number is something like less than less than 13% come back, and that was years ago. I might have a different, it might be less than that. Worth looking into the number of people that actually come back for their court dates with that. But I should talk about the children in cages at the border. It is a absolute travesty that anyone is held in any substandard conditions on the border. That comes from a lack of funding. That comes from a lack of Congress having proper laws. Barack Obama built the cages. Trump uses the cages. That's a wash in terms of partisan politics. They're both bad. The fact that Trump is actually fighting things on the border, and the fact that we have these cages filled up with people because we're actually handling things on the border, makes me give Trump more credit than Obama. There's a lot of benefits to Trump, even though there are also costs, and it sucks. But if you want to pull at the heartstrings and cry like little babies because, you know, you saw pictures of sad kids at the border, but you don't know what you're talking about, you don't know that it's a bipartisan issue, you don't know that it's an issue of laws, and it's an issue that's been like 20 years in the making at least. Excessive immigration has been an issue since 1970. Don't cry, don't throw fits, don't think you're so self-righteous because you're like, the kids at the border. It makes me sick. It really makes me sick. Like, I just can't. I hate all the emotional manipulation. This gets me motivated. This gets me fired up. I hate all the emotional manipulation in politics. It is, and in immigration, it is rife with it. It is rife with emotional manipulation. You don't like undocumented immigrants? You must hate immigrants. Are you racist? All that crap, man. It's so annoying and manipulative and old. Yeah, there's some idiots that are actually racist, but there's not. And you should have a discussion as if people aren't racist. And then and then through the discussion, you can discover that they actually do hold beliefs that some races are superior or inferior to others, or that they dislike certain races as a whole based off of specific examples. That's racist. Not, I criticize Barack Obama, and since I'm a white man in white America, that is a part of the racial patriarchy of intersectional feminism. Man. Yeah. So, illegal immigrants. We shouldn't have them. There's tons of consequences to it, real consequences, and if you dismiss it, it's because you're naive, most likely. I was going to say it's because you're a heartless bastard, but that's not the case. You should open up your heart and understand that there's real, like when someone gets raped or murdered and it's an illegal immigrant and we could have stopped them at the border, but we have a weak border, so we didn't. There's a problem there, and the fact that you're not picking it up is because of partisan politics. Really, it's not even naivety. It's because of partisan politics. It's because you're programmed to not see the value in that argument because of stupid politics. Okay. That's future illegal immigrants. Now, current illegal immigrants in the country are a different deal entirely. Some of them are just people that were brought here as kids, smuggled over, the dreamers, DACA, all that stuff. Some of them are just people that came here illegally, broke the laws, whatever, but they came here and they're just people being nice, working their job, trying to get along with life, just being a good citizen. I don't think those people should get citizenship, but I think they should be given some sort of legal residence so that they can just live in peace here. If you have committed violent crimes, though, if you're not one of those people, if you're an illegal immigrant in the country and you've committed violent crimes, you should be thrown in jail. Feed the prison industrial complex with them. I don't care if you're a rapist or a murderer, you should be locked away for life. That's a problem we have generally. We need to lock those freaking mothers. Sorry, not mothers. Those mother effers. We need to put rapists generally in behind bars for life. Period. And so obviously if an illegal immigrant fits that criteria, they need to get the boot too. And that's it, man. That's really it. We should take only as many immigrants as we can that we have excess jobs for, so that we don't dilute labor scarcity. Legal immigrants are fine. You can choose a merit system with some diversity as a secondary value. And illegal immigration is a problem. And illegal immigrants in the country that are safe and fine and aren't a danger to anybody should be allowed to stay legally, but maybe should be put at the back of the list for becoming a citizen eventually. Maybe. I'm not even sure about that, but definitely they should be given legal residence, and illegal immigrants in the country that have committed crimes against other human beings of substance, violent crimes, should be booted. And that's about it. Jordan out. That sounds douchey, doesn't it? Farmer out.